Hello and welcome to Actionable ESG, Turning Insights into Results webinar. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dan Nathan and I lead the business development team here at Cobie. The session today will be recorded and sent to all participants after today's call. Today's session will run about 45 minutes in length and we've left time at the end of the presentation for your questions. During this webinar, we will learn how GRESB is growing in the commercial real estate world, as well as discuss strategies on efficient GRESB preparation, submission, and outstanding results. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce to you our speakers for today's call, Dan Winters from GRESB and Healy Lev from Cobie. Dan Winters is the head of GRESB for North America and has the responsibility of furthering GRESB's international scope by engaging institutional investors throughout North America, establishing industry partnerships, and expanding GRESB coverage among REITs and private equity firms. Healy Lev is the Chief Revenue Officer at Cobie. She earned her bachelor's degree in architecture and an MBA in international business and entrepreneurship from Northwestern University. As Chief Revenue Officer, she is responsible for leading the Cobie commercial SaaS business, sales team, consulting business, and HR. Dan, the stage is yours.
Great. Thanks so much. In the broader context of what CREZ is about. Aha. Oh, I'm sorry. It seems like we may have been on mute. Should I just start over?
I think that would work.
Okay, great. So, hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. My name is Dan Winters. I'm head of Americas with GRESB. This call finds me in Chicago today, where we're just wrapping up the PREA fall meeting. PREA is the Pension Real Estate Association. They're one of our partners. And it was really interesting to see ESG becoming more and more embedded within the programming, within various things that are happening, whether it's reporting, whether it's the innovation affinity group. And my takeaway is that ESG has a lot of momentum, and I think we'll build on that with the results presentation element of what we're going to talk about today from the GRESB side. So let's just start a little bit as to what GRESB is, right? We've been around since 2009, and we have a very clear mission. Our mission is to enhance and protect shareholder value. And we do this on behalf of a group of institutional investors that are our founding members. We've grown to over 70 institutional investors. And what our mission is to do is to empower sustainability practices in the real asset sector. Well, what does that mean? It's really about best business practices. It's about business 101. You maximize your inputs, you minimize your waste, and you use ESG, sustainability, whatever your lexicon is, in order to make progress within your portfolio, to keep your eye on and measure and manage and reduce energy, water, waste, and other aspects within your portfolio. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about today. So GRESB was started in 2009. And it was started by three major limited LP investors, two Dutch and one in the UK. And we've since grown to represent 70. In 2015, we advanced and we took on the debt side of the capital stack. So not only do we have our real estate assessment that's been around for 7 years, we also have the debt assessment, and then 2 years ago we launched GRESB for infrastructure, and that covers the entire real asset side of many investment banks and pension funds that are investing in this space. So we're going to focus on the real estate assessment with the comments today. The logos that you're seeing on the screen represent our institutional investor members. In aggregate, they add up to about $18 trillion worth of investments under management. And you can bifurcate these between limited partner investors in real estate private equity funds, or folks that invest in REIT securities. And so we're getting a lot of interest in our securities data set. We've got 25 of the 70 that subscribe to that. That's really a big growth side of GRESB. And what these folks do is they integrate ESG data and they use our analytical tools. Sometimes they do it behind the scene. Other times they do it when they're engaging with the management teams to say, basically, what are you doing on GRESB? What are you doing with sustainability? And how are you moving your portfolio and getting it better? Okay, I'm having a hard time advancing the slides. Perfect. Okay, so in 2017 we added and these are some highlights. We added CalPERS, and CalPERS engaged, they basically invest with separate accounts. So they reached out to all of their managers and they said, we'd like you to participate in GRESB, and they had a 100% rate of managers submitting a GRESB assessment in 2017. The reason why they're doing this, not only to figure out ESG and the aspects within their portfolio, but CalPERS also signed the Montreal Pledge. And what that means is that they are going to issue a carbon footprint report of their entire investment portfolio. And they have roughly $300 billion under management. They use GRESB both for real estate and infrastructure to understand what their portfolio looks like and to tally up those energy spends and kilowatt hours, and are going to use that when issuing this report. Northern Trust, on the other hand, they created a product for the REIT sector that is an inclusionary product. And what that means is that for those REITs that participate in GRESB globally, and the way that they've set this up is if you score 2 stars or higher, you can be included in the investable universe within this product. So from an institutional investor standpoint, GRESB is about transparency. It's about transparency on the 40 different aspects that make up a GRESB score. And you're fundamentally trying to tease out 2 things: portfolio opportunities and risk. And that's what really drives efficient capital markets, is transparency to get at these issues. So if you consider the histogram on the screen and you look at it from market behavior, right, there's a normal distribution curve. On the left, you've got regulation. The vast majority of people follow the law and do great things, and people will go above and beyond in installing high efficiency chillers and other aspects within their portfolio. So the idea, when you think about the building labels, has been to codify and recognize leadership. And that can be LEED, that can be energy with Energy Star, and obviously these labels are worldwide, whether it's BREEAM or Neighbors or Green Star in Australia. And what we've seen is we've seen the market be able to shift and move to the right by rewarding this leadership and recognizing it. It's moved the whole market to the right. So the same concept applies with GRESB. GRESB is a portfolio level assessment. Portfolios are made up of buildings. We see within our responses that people are reporting on all of those labels and more. And the idea is to recognize the fund managers and REITs that are doing really good things within their portfolio on environmental, social, and governance issues. So just to put this in more of a different framework, institutional investors for us are at the top of our pyramid. REITs and private equity firms are the ones that participate in GRESB, and it's really the portfolio managers and the asset managers who are gathering up the data. And it's really what you measure, you manage. That's kind of passé now, and it's what you measure, you improve. And GRESB becomes a very useful tool for portfolio managers and asset managers to understand what's happening in their portfolio, manage it better on the downstream to the property managers and facility managers, and also communicate up to the institutional investor partners the things that they're doing to manage risk and drive better risk-adjusted returns. GRESB has strong industry support. I led off talking about PREA. They're in the lower middle, but if you look around the globe, We have, all of the major industry associations are our partners and are very engaged in driving ESG within the broader industry. So let's talk briefly about the assessment and what is this thing, right? So we've got some competencies. First and foremost is GRESB is a systematic assessment. It's done yearly. It opens on April 1st. It closes on July 1st. So it's a second quarter phenomena. And that's when companies and funds are out there and they're uploading their data and they're gathering policies and procedures and putting this into GRESB. When GRESB closes in July, we then take in all this data and we administer an objective scoring procedure on ESG, environmental, social, and governance, which are basically in those 40 questions that make up GRESB. And ultimately, the B in GRESB is benchmarking, and that's really the key element of GRESB. Is it gives you a peer benchmark, and it shows participants how they're doing against a set of peers that are based on region and property type and whether you're a listed or private equity firm. And that's some good solid market intelligence, particularly for some of the first timers, to say, hey, sustainability really is a thing and it's being engaged by the market writ large. And here's how we're stacking up against our peers. And it gives people, when they get their scores in September, an opportunity to focus on areas of improvement, do management gap analysis for the following year, because GRESB it's a repeated cycle. You do this annually. It's wash, rinse, repeat. So what you do in 27, you're going to want to do again in 2018, and so on. So there's two sides of the coin here. On the right side, we've got institutional investors who are LPs in funds or are stockholders in REITs, and they use the GRESB assessment as that tool to understand the engagement and attributes of their investments. On the left-hand side, developers are basically the product developers that portfolio owners purchase. And so GRESB also has a developer assessment. And that's used by portfolio owners to engage with their developer partners to say, hey, what are you doing to deliver us superior product? How are you doing that? Are you engaged in these issues? So, two sides of the coin, something to consider from wherever you sit. So GRESB has an ISO 14001 approach where we have a series of indicators and they're set up in a plan, do, check, act format. So here's what that looks like. What is a plan? A plan is, do you have targets? Do you have policies that guide your actions? And then policies beget action. What do you do? So is ESG incorporated into due diligence and underwriting? Do you do risk assessments on your portfolio? Do you have management systems to gather data? And are you doing a sort of real-time improvement as your portfolio continues to mature and change over time, and that becomes the reporting construct? And then what kind of actions are you taking when you're doing forward-looking plans, getting towards, with an eye towards 2020? So I talked about those indicators. Here's how that breaks up. GRESB has 7 different aspects. So from management to monitoring and environmental management systems. Obviously, performance indicators is key. That's your energy, water, waste, greenhouse gas emissions, building certifications, and other things that are in the marketplace make up a small amount of the GRESB assessment. And then a lot of it is really, are you doing stakeholder engagement? Are you surveying your tenants? How do you deal with internal folks as they're a product champion on ESG? So those are the 7 aspects of GRESB that make up the GRESB score that all participants get in September. And there's the weighting of each of those aspects. So the GRESB scorecard is pretty rich with information. It's meant to be used as a management gap analysis tool to understand where you are relative to peers, see your trend over time, because again, it's an annual assessment and people do this on an annual basis. The histograms on the second page can be very useful to show the distribution of behavior within the industry, and they very much help focus forward efforts on areas of improvement once you participate. So We like to think of it as comparative intelligence on the scorecard. All participants get that. GRESB is supported by our members. We've got roughly, 38 of the top 50 private equity funds are members of GRESB, many of the top REITs and listed property companies around the world, and they get benchmark reports, which is a real detailed, fine analysis that says, question by question, did you get points, how many, and what are the attributes of your peer group, and how do they answer those questions. And then our investor members have the ability to use our portfolio analysis tool to do more slicing and dicing of that data. So I'm going to close. I'm just going to run through the GRESB results for 2017 so you can see how the industry has moved over time. In 2010, when GRESB was first administered, we had 198 folks participate in the initial benchmark. Over time, that's grown year on year on year. And last year, we set another all-time high with 850 funds or firms participating in the GRESB assessment. They do it on behalf of their LP investors. They do it on behalf of themselves as they want to get some market intelligence and improve. On the slide you see now, we show where the geographic distribution is. GRESB is based in Amsterdam. It was started in Europe, so we are European dominated when it comes to our participants. I will admit that I think that they're a little bit further along on ESG than we are here in the Americas. But last year we topped over 200, and that was a real nice high watermark for us. And if you think about where the money is, the money's here. And the money's in Chicago and New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco. We have an outsized impact on our efforts collectively to help the industry move forward. And so, that's the breakdown of where the 204, and it's basically a third of the participants covered 2/3 of the capital. So if you watch this graphic, you'll see how GRESB has changed the industry and moved over time. So what you're seeing, each dot represents a participant and where they scored on the management and policy axis on the left and the implementation and measurement axis on the bottom. And I'll repeat this. I think I can do it. There we go. So there's in 2011, you'll see that the scores were really, on the left-hand side, they were low. There were some firms that were doing some great things, and they were in the upper right-hand quadrant, but the cluster was down to the left, and you'll see where that average was. It was certainly below 50. And so as the years changed, we saw management and policies get implemented, and then once that happens, implementation and measurement follows. And you see a style drift. You see the drift to the upper right. So sustainability has really become ingrained in a lot of private equity firms and real estate investment trusts, and that's the distribution now. So we've had a pretty good impact, and it's getting it's getting much more competitive, and that's how capital markets work. One point that I'll make is that the difference between a 5-star fund and a 1-star fund is roughly a 4x difference. In the top 10 and the bottom 10%, those are different companies. Those are very different companies when it comes to managing risk. And it's just been a really interesting phenomena for us to see. So consistent engagement drives improvement. Here's the peer groups. So this year, the first-year participants scored a 52. That's a very strong showing. I know a lot of companies have been out there getting GRESB ready. For those that have been participating 8 years, year after year after year, their average score is 75. And you can see what those cohorts look like. So the 7-year cohort is slightly below them, 6 years slightly below that. But it's been a real good positive showing of organizations that continue to engage GRESB and how it's helped them move forward and make progress within their portfolios. So here's what that histogram looks like from 2012. Normal distribution, 2017. Industry moved to the right, scores have moved significantly higher, and it's weighted to the right. So good things are happening out there. This is a little commentary on what I witness from a behavioral economic standpoint. The entry point are LPs saying, hey, we want you to participate in GRESB. It's important to us. It's important to risk management. And firms do it out of a compliance mentality. That said, we're seeing more and more folks that are curious and seeing what's happening in the industry. So that's in years 1 through 3 is a compliance curiosity mentality. But once folks get that score, boy, those competitive juices kick in, and that's what market that's what drives market behavior. Ultimately, the game is risk management and business value. And it's the organizations, typically in their third year, they start to find, the areas where they're doing that and starting to do it effectively. But they'll also jump back into competition mode. I've got conversations going with pretty much all of the open-end private equity funds. And I will tell you, there's 20 of them, and I've got at least 10 that say, Dan, all we want to do is be in the top 5. Well, if 10 firms want to be in the top 5, you guys do the math and see how that's going to work. Competition is strong with that group. So there's my contact information. I just wanted to set the stage, and now I want to turn over to Healy at Cobie and talk about how Cobie helps firms with their energy, water, waste, and really tackle GRESB. Healy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And Dan, always a pleasure to have you here at Cobie HQ, and fun to attend Priya with you last night. Dan and I got to see Michelle Obama speak, which was amazing, and get us all fired up to talk more about sustainability and positive change in the world. So I'm feeling inspired this morning. All right, so a little bit about us. I think most of the folks on the phone probably know who we are, what we do, but this is what we're about. So fundamentally, Cobie started because we saw these data silos. So we saw people keeping all kinds of information in Excel, in people's hard drives, in various systems, sometimes upwards of 12 disparate property management systems, accounting systems, both a combination of technology and manual. And we didn't like this because it doesn't let the people that need visibility into the portfolio have it. So they might sit in New York or Chicago and have a portfolio of 50 or 100 buildings and just have no idea what's going on in any of them. So that's the fundamental vision we try to solve, is taking all this piecemealed, disparate data, putting it into our system, validating it, QAing it, and then the output, off to the right, the outputs can really be infinite. Of course, GRESB is the most renowned, best, most popular output that you could have, and I don't only say that because Dan Winters is sitting in the room, or maybe I do, but no, but the point is all these rating systems, they fit, different folks have different reasons for reporting and different drivers and motivations and different needs and different goals, so there's a flavor for everyone, and the purpose of Cobie is we try to align such that if you have underlying good, clean, complete, accurate, and validated data off of your utility bills and whatnot, and building attribute information, the sky's the limit as to what you can do on the right. So a little bit about us and who we are, how we came to be. If you look at the green arrows on the top, that represents the founders and executive team of Cobie. So the founders came up through PwC, so management strategy consulting for Fortune 500, then went to Ariba where they got very well versed in software applications. I myself, background in architecture, spent the first decade of my career at Jones Lang LaSalle learning all facets of the commercial real estate business, and that's the expertise that we bring into Cobie. If you look at our investor stack down the left-hand side, so we have, we're VC backed with a real estate private equity firm called Green Soil Investments out of Toronto. Their biggest LP is a group called Grosvenor out of the UK, so very much international presence and international mindset. Little known fact that National Association of Realtors is also a investor in Cobie, as well as Able Services, which is outsourced chief engineering, building ops, so really deep knowledge on how buildings actually operate. And then we're about 80 employees, still headquartered in Chicago, but national and international presence, and of course the outputs at the bottom we already talked about. So one thing, so we do, this is our, dare I say, our annual GRESB webinar with Dan, and we're excited because last year at this time we did it, so same thing, weather's changing in Chicago, leaves, colors are changing, pumpkin spice lattes are back, but the big difference this season, after completing another successful GRESB season, is that we're now in 49 countries, so that is definitely something new and exciting that's happened at Cobie since we last spoke at this webinar roughly 1 year ago. Our solutions remain the same, so we do invoice automation, energy management, and sustainability reporting. With regards to GRESB, we're definitely going to be on that right-hand side with the sustainability reporting, but again, everything starts with good invoice automation. Everything starts with the ability to get good, clean, and complete validated data off of a utility bill and into a format that can be digested over hundreds of buildings. So let's talk about performance. So I like the slide where Dan showed kind of the shift from, I believe it was 2011 to the present of how the industry as a whole with regards to GRESB participants has really just moved up and to the right. And that's the goal, not just because it's fun to get a good score and it's cool to be first in your sector and you get the bragging rights, but really I think we all, anyone in this industry, we kind of go back to it's the right thing to do, right? We want to leave a better planet for the future. We want to reduce energy. Buildings are giant energy pigs. And if we can run and operate our buildings better, we can truly make the world a better place. And I think we all do believe that. But let's talk about results and competition because it's fun. So record number of properties and funds did submissions with Cobie this year. Our clients' portfolios range from all different industry sectors, all disciplines, so office, industrial, retail, mixed use, medical office, across the board. Almost all of our clients achieve the Green Star status with a handful of sector leaders and 4- and 5-star folks. And a quarter of our clients submitted to GRESB for the first time. So they hit the ground running, and as Dan talked about the curve of how you kind of improve every year, but a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So we're definitely proud of the folks that reported for the first time this year.
Didn't you have a first timer last year that
it was a sector leader? Yeah, it was crazy. Craziest thing ever. But that's what happens when you hire Cobie to do your GRESB. You go from 0 to sector leader, like in 1 year.
Careful, I don't know if you can guarantee that.
Not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. But
good job with them anyway.
Yeah, super excited. So a couple success nuggets. I like to speak anecdotally, not on a macro level of results, though they're good, but just a couple little vignettes here for you. So large office REIT in 2016 got 4 stars, 2017 got 5 stars, went up 13 points, and we're a peer group leader. So again, just the results when you start to really bite down and really dig into the sections and how you can improve year over year. And that was not a first time reporter, obviously. Retail REIT. So GRESB participants since 2013 weren't doing great on the KPIs. Were reporting predominantly alone, with the resource that they had within the organization. So no dedicated person, sustainability person or anything. No necessarily dedicated tools. Engaged with us this past spring. We were able to automate 5,000 invoices, streamline the data across 19 properties, and got them an increase in 15 points. Now, the most important bullet on this one to me, automated 5,000 invoices. So if you're like, the head of asset management or the head of property management, you have a full-time day job, you don't have time. How are you going to consume 5,000 invoices? Sure, you can bother your properties to do it, but some of them will, some of them won't. Garbage in, garbage out. You type in usage into the cost field or whatnot. So it's really great when you can have a technology and a system where you can consume those utility bills, automate them, no room for human error, validate them, QA them, and then really start to move the needle, not only in GRESB scoring, but then in visibility as to how your assets are performing, so that you can, make improvements and continue to go up and to the right. Last one, so medical office REIT, GRESB participants since 2012, also engaged with us this past winter/spring. 6 points added and went up pretty high in their peer group. So proud to be helping out with that. So we talked a little bit about I looked at the attendee list yesterday, and I think we have everyone on the phone might fall into one of these buckets, and there's a different use case for each one of these folks. So say you're a VP or a director of sustainability. So you have a very clear marching orders of what you're trying to do. Hopefully your full-time occupation and job is dedicated to just sustainability initiatives. Perhaps you have some budget for these types of things, and you're going to really move the needle. So why would you need a company like Cobie to help you? Where we can really help, again, if you look back at that example of 5,000 utility invoices. So even if you're a full-time sustainability person, do you want to spend your time aggregating utility data, herding cats, chasing down property teams, liaising with the utilities? You could, but not the highest and best use of your time. We'd rather see those folks really engaging with strategy, thinking about high level, how they're going to drive results and move the needle for their organization. So, and we offer that. If you just want a big hand and a heavy lift with the data side of things, the KPI side of things, totally here for you. Then you get into the middle section where you have folks that are head of asset management, head of portfolio management, director of operations. All these people read between the lines. I have a day job that takes 50 hours a week. And then, oh, by the way, on the side in your spare time, can you also tackle or handle this sustainability thing? So in that case, you might need more than just a heavy lift on the data side. You might actually need a partner that can help you drive strategy, talk about what types of systems you want to do, what types of certifications you want to achieve, what type of reporting you want to do, what are reasonable goals to set, how you're going to attain those goals. So in that case, because Cobie is that unique blend in the market of, we have the technology piece, but we also have the consulting piece, so we can under one roof help in a scenario like that where you do need the strategy and the logistics and the brains behind the operation, but then you also need the heavy lift with the data. And then we have a lot of folks on the line, so you might be saying to yourself, well, hey, GRESB is a portfolio, assessment, a portfolio benchmark. What can I do? I'm at one property, I'm an engineer at a property, or I'm a property manager over one or two properties. How could I possibly help this portfolio-wide initiative that might encompass all 200 buildings in my fund? So actually, a lot of the results and what happens in GRESB is driven by efforts at the building. So things that you do at your building with regards to energy conservation, commissioning, Energy Star, upgrades to the physical property, chiller replacement, equipment, on and on and on, you actually can impact the score of your overall organization by just operating a better, smarter building, and also being, of course, financially responsible for your owner by driving the NOI and the bottom line on the value of their assets. So no matter who you are, and again, I try to speak to the majority of the folks on the phone, we can help you with that. So if it is something where you're like, I'm at the property level, I really want to help move the needle for my owner, for my investors, to help with GRESB, to do the right thing, whatever it is. So we can help with a LEED certification or Energy Star or commissioning effort or getting the local utility incentives to get some money back for projects that you're doing at the property. So time is of the essence. So you might say, well, we already we finished GRESB, we got our results in September, it's only October, I'm gonna relax and hang out until I have to get stressed about it until next June. So that's the wrong way to think about it. And I think last year we gave the analogy of like a marathon. So if you're gonna run a marathon in June, you're not gonna start training for the marathon in May. Doesn't make sense. It's kind of the same thing. And the other analogy I like to give is GRESB is kind of like taxes. So next June we're reporting,
like taxes. What?
Well, let me finish my thought. Next June we're reporting on calendar year 2017. So the books close 12/31, right?
I see.
So if you start to do things, make initiatives, collect data in Jan, Feb, March, we're collecting. It's in the past already. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah, well, it's all about getting that big refund.
That's right. So you need to maximize what you're doing in the calendar year to get your refund that you're going to report on next spring. See, so it is like taxes.
Aha.
He agrees. I think I've convinced him. So the time is of the essence. You want to start now. So, okay, here's a visual timeline of, why you want to start now. So we still have time, right? So it's only October of 2017. Yes, the year is winding down, but we still have half of October, November, and December. In that time, there are still things that we can do to tweak management on the management policy side and help with policy updates, really start to dig into the organization and perhaps implement some things that will still be effective in calendar year 2017. We can also start data collection now and not be scrambling to get all this information next year, because the more data coverage we're able to get, the better the score, and you're able to get more data coverage if you start earlier. We have more time to engage with the properties, the utilities, and get the information that we need. So in our opinion, of course, as the humble service provider, January 1st is a bit too late. Can it be done? Sure. Will we sign new clients up in February and even into March to the detriment of the team who wants to kill us? Sure, we will, but better to start sooner and better to start now.
Well, so let me just offer some more context on that. What GRESB is a look back, and so when you're doing your 2018 assessment, it's asking questions about things that were in place in 2017. The real issue with GRESB from an institutional investor standpoint is, when you ask a portfolio manager, can you get the energy, water, waste data on their portfolio? That's a big question. And it takes a lot of time and effort, many times multiple years, to get these things in place. So that's how Cobie has come up and have been very helpful to companies getting that data. But when you do your 2018 assessment, it's really all about, what did you do in 2017? What did you have in place then? So the time is of an essence, because we've got 60 days before,
business days roughly, yeah. less
So
than that.
there's a lot of
54
activity
business days.
happening right now in order to be able to show that in the 2018 assessment.
Yep. And for those folks who are, they're nervous about it, they've heard about it, they don't know where to start, they don't know if they want to start, it's a big commitment, it's a financial commitment, it's a time commitment. So a couple things to know. And then also, of course, am I going to be publicly shamed when I find out I'm number 12 out of 12 in my peer group?
We don't release things publicly. That's
first year. That's
no.
Or ever.
It only goes to our investor members, right? So GRESB does not list anybody publicly other than the sector leaders.
Other than the sector leaders, but within your peer group, you can still see how, if you're within the peer group, you can see how other folks ranked within your group.
If you've opted into that, that's a nuanced thing, but I think the key thing is GRESB does not release publicly the scores.
So the point I want to emphasize, confidential and private.
Yeah.
So no one's going to be publicly shamed
Correct.
For anything.
It's between you and your LP investors or your shareholders. Go ahead.
Perfect. So no fear of that. No one's going to publicly shame you. The world is not going to know that you're number 12 out of 12 in your sector, but it is going to give you, maybe we were talking to someone last night. Maybe you try it out, you find out you're number 2 in your sector and you're like, wow, that's pretty awesome. We didn't even realize we were that good. Maybe you find out you're dead last and you're like, all right, well, we might not have the wherewithal to be first, but we definitely don't want to be dead last. So it will give you an idea of where you want to be. And then again, to the point of, it takes time, right? And it is time consuming, especially in year one, as we get set up, get acclimated with a new account. Even the folks that we work with, year one's the heavy lift. Year 2 and beyond get easier. So consider starting with just a GRESB assessment, like a gap analysis. So you say, I'm thinking about doing this. I don't know yet that I'm ready to make the financial or time commitment to it, but I kind of want to know what I don't know. So something that we offer is where our team's able to come in, give you an expert opinion. Maybe also you've participated once alone, so you signed up, you dipped your toe in the water, you did some stuff, but you didn't score well. So we can come in and say, all right, well, here's where we think we can improve. Here's where you could do better. Here's where you can catch some additional points. Here's how engaging a service provider might help you. Here's how you could do it on your own. Or folks who are like, I signed up for this webinar because I was interested in it, never heard of it before. How am I going to do? So we can try to give you, of course, not a perfect idea, but a bit of an idea of how you might score, just given the basic lay of the land, what kind of access you have to the utility data at the buildings, on and on and on. You'll get a nice little report that outlines all of this, and of course at a price point that's not offensive to anyone, to try it out.
Well, interestingly on that, next week we're going to be releasing the GRESB pre-assessment, which is not, it strips away all the energy, water, waste data, because that's the hard thing.
That's the heavy lift, sure.
It is. And it's really all about, how are you doing right now, and to get a prejudge as to, where you might stand going forward. We've got a lot of interest in that, particularly for first-time funds that are going through due diligence. Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. So assessment it's a low risk, low time, low cost commitment to kind of just see what's going on.
Right.
Maybe you finish that and you're like, oh, this isn't for me. Or maybe we talked to other folks who are like, you know what, as much as I'd love to report in 2018, I'm going to get GRESB ready, which is a term I heard you use before, and I'm going to get ready for 2019 because I'm not ready. So then that's fine too. All right. So I think that's everything that I wanted to hit on at a high level. We've got about 20 minutes for questions. Dan?
Yeah.
There's 2 Dans in the room, by the way.
Sorry, Dan Nathan from Cobie, not Dan Winters.
Hey everyone, this is Dan Nathan. I'll lead the question and answer session. Feel free to submit your questions using the chat feature on your computer on the webinar. We did have a few come in, so we just kind of covered a little bit of this, but I'll turn this around to you, Healy and Dan. First question was, how do we know we're ready? Is there any way to know before we disclose?
Well, let me start with that. You're ready because, it's just, you're ready. There's no downside to participating in GRESB. We have a grace period where you don't show up in our data set if you're on the listed side. If you're a GP and you've got LP investors, you definitely want to, when you're capital raising or communicating with them, say, yeah, we're participating in GRESB. The results are not public. The results are yours, and it's really meant to give you business intelligence against a peer group that says, hey, there's a lot of things that are going on out there. There's engagement by our competitors, and here's how we stack up. So I don't think you're ever not ready. It's best to just move forward and see where you are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a combination of things. Sometimes you're ready because your parent organization is CalPERS and they said you're ready. You know, people come to us and they're like, well, we have to do this, right? So to the point of compliance. Sometimes you're ready because you want to be a sector leader and it's part of it's ingrained in your. I'm thinking of a particular client of ours. They just want to be first and best at everything, and it's in their DNA. They want to be the greenest, best company out there. So I think again, the motivations are different, whether you're listed or not listed. It's going to be different drivers. So if you're still not sure if you're ready, why don't you ask? Reach out. We'll have a chat. Me, you, and Dan Winters. Yep. And we'll let you know if you're ready.
All right, thanks. Next question, Healy, you kind of covered this a little bit, but maybe we could reiterate. When is the latest I can start for GRESB, and when is the best time to start GRESB?
Sure. So unofficially off the record, don't tell my team who will kill me in my sleep. But I mean, we've started people as late as March, April, if we have to. But can we get a submission together quickly in April, May, June? Yeah, it can be done. We can get it done, but it's going to be a lot more comprehensive, less stressful, more data capture, and more meaningful if we can get started sooner. And then also to the point I made before, getting started in the calendar year that you're actually reporting on makes a lot more sense because you can still do things, make changes, and actually have an impact on what you're reporting in arrears next spring.
So what I observe when I'm talking with listed companies and private equity funds is, the first year is a heavy lift. It's kind of like getting the space shuttle to take off, right? And you're watching it take off from the pad and it's going slow, but you know that there's it's going to get momentum. People sometimes describe it as a treasure hunt around the organization because you're confronted with these 40 questions. And do you have policies? Can you get data, right? And that's really what GRESB is meant to prompt. So the first year can be daunting. Mm-hmm. It's often why companies, will score low. And that's great because that's what a benchmark is all about. You put a line in the sand and say, this is where we are today, and where do we want to be by 2020? Where do we want to be by 2022? And it's meant to prompt those questions and start a process of continual improvement. So again, that first year can be a heavy lift, but it also helps you organize your information around this framework, and that can be a very valuable tool over time.
All right, the next question, is there a threshold of assets or funds I need to report?
No, we will have, so on the big side, we've got JP Morgan's fund, it's 30 billion. We've got Morgan Stanley's fund, that's 20 billion, and they have wholly owned subsidiaries in there. So there are hundreds and hundreds of properties on the large side. On the other side of the coin, we have single asset portfolios that participate. So there's no threshold. It's really all about you and your investor and your own internal goals and objectives.
Okay. If I do participate, what recommendations do you have for communicating my results?
So there's a section on our website that will detail that. I mean, to me, it's about trend over time. We have the 1 to 5 star status. So that is something that is often communicated to investors. When I'm out talking to institutional investors, I basically encourage them to ask 3 questions. Question number 1 is, did you participate in GRESB last year? And that sends you down one of 2 paths. So the next question is, what did you think? And now you're really starting to have a conversation with your investor partners. And you're now talking about energy efficiency initiatives within the portfolio, lighting retrofits, on-site renewables, whatever your programs are, you're now having that conversation and you're giving them confidence that you are doing a good job on managing risk and driving risk-adjusted returns. And then the third question that I encourage institutional investors to ask their investment managers is, what are you doing to get better? What are you doing now that is going to make this portfolio better at 2020, 2022, if there's a wind-up date with the closed-end fund or if it's an open-end vehicle, right? What are you doing? And again, that's a conversation starter. So GRESB is meant to be that conversation between you and your investors, and it's to help you organize this information and showcase the good things that you're doing. I often see companies that are doing random acts of sustainability. That's pretty clear that the vast majority of companies out there are doing it, but having a systematic framework from which to organize your information and communicate it is very beneficial.
And how many would you say? So you say it's something you want to kind of socialize between you and your investors. Like, what's the breakdown of participants that you say want to just like shout this from the rooftop and press release it, and it's for the general world and the public to know and brag, versus the folks who are like, I participated to know where I stand, and this is kind of private information that I want to keep with my investors? Like, is it just like, kind of the top 2 or 3 or the sector leaders that are like, yay me, look at me, or is it like?
No, I think, well, everybody wants recognition, and particularly for the people that are internal to the companies. You're trying to get budget, you're a change agent within your firm. So, maybe you want to communicate to the outside that, hey, we're doing great, and it's typically the 4 or 5-star funds that want to do that. But you also want to communicate internally to asset managers, portfolio managers, people with C's in their titles, and say, hey, here's where we are, here's where our competitive set is, and we need some more resources. We have some really good ideas, and we need to pay better attention. I will point out that there are companies that I'm aware of that, for the first couple of years were stuck in compliance mode, and then they started to get better, and now on earnings calls, they're leading with sustainability because it's a good story, and it's really about investment in the existing portfolio on things that are making that portfolio better. And it's about risk-adjusted returns. And then once the sustainability story is over, then you get into the mundane details of all those financial boring things, right? Return on assets, return on equity. But,
money we made this year, boring details.
Right. But nonetheless, I've watched that behavior shift, and it's been pretty cool.
Cool.
Other questions?
All right. Could you please reiterate, what do I need to submit or disclose for the first time?
Well, so let me start with that. So if you go, so the GRESB Assessment is available on the website. Go to GRESB.com and you scroll down to the footer. There's a section called Resources, and I believe the second link says the assessment. And if you click on that, you will see all kinds of documents, including the 2017 GRESB Assessment. I think it's translated into different languages. There's the reference guide. I very much encourage people to take a look at the assessment document to understand what those questions are, and that really answers the question on the table now. Mm-hmm. The reference guide is a real detailed breakdown that says, if I'm answering question 22, what are the parameters and what is that question really asking, and that gets really detailed. So don't go to that first, go to that second, but take a look at the assessment document that's there. You can do it on the debt side, you can do it on infrastructure, it's there for real estate as well.
And is it like the SAT, Dan? Do you get 200 points just for filling out your name? You gotta do more than that.
There are companies that score single digits. I think they may have spelled their name wrong. So, no, you got to put in some elbow grease on GRESB, without a doubt.
All right. GRESB has expanded to include debt and infrastructure. Are there any other assessments we will see in the near future?
Well, we have a module. So GRESB has been expanding by modules. There's a health and well-being module, and that is voluntary, right? And so what we're finding is that there are folks, I think we had 250 of the 850 that participated in the health and well-being module. And that's a series of 10 questions, and it asks, what are you doing for your employees? What are you doing in your buildings to promote health and wellness with your stakeholders, who are either your employees or your tenants? So that exists. That'll be out there in the third year. It's 2 years running now, so it'll be there in 2018. Topics that are bubbling to the surface include cybersecurity. There was a big article in Pensions and Investments last week how cybersecurity is an ESG issue, and so that's getting some traction internally with us. Also resilience, right? We saw what happened with our hurricane season this year. So we don't have modules created for those at the moment, but those are definitely topical matters that will, over time, be addressed.
Makes sense. That's interesting that cybersecurity would fall under ESG, but I guess where else would it fall?
Yep.
Cool.
It's a big threat.
Oh, yeah.
So investors want to understand who's prepared for this.
Yep.
And with anything, there's a distribution of behavior in the marketplace. Some companies are all over this stuff, and I left one this morning that described what they're doing on it, and it was pretty impressive. Others are like, gee golly, shucks. And so if you're a LP investor, I think you want to know where everyone's lining up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we had one last question. I can actually fill this one myself. Can we download the slides? After the webinar, we will email these out. They'll also be available on the Learn page of gobieinc.com. And if there's no further questions, that concludes the webinar for today. So on behalf of GRESB and Cobie, thank you all for sharing your questions and knowledge. If you should have any additional questions, please feel free to email info@gobieinc.com.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks.